Hello out there, and today I'm doing a display case comparison review between the Kershaw Method, which is a new for 2018 design, and also the Kershaw Fraxion. And I knew that when I picked up the Method that it was going to be somewhat similar to the Fraxion. Both of them are designed by Yanzanzo, both made by Kershaw overseas with the same materials. But I was still really surprised at just how similar they were. And it got me thinking about one of my big frustrations when it comes to purchasing knives, and that's that there just aren't a lot of brick and mortar stores for us to walk into and get a knife in our hands before we actually make a purchase. You know, so often when those stores do exist, they're either out of the way or they're overpriced. A lot of times they just don't have very good selection, and so we're driven to purchasing knives online without ever really getting a feel for them before we make those decisions. And so I wanted to think about just what it would have been like had I the opportunity to go into a store and see these two knives in a display case together, and which one would I have chosen? You know, and would it have been the right choice now that I've had the knives for a few weeks? You know, like which one do I prefer, and would it have been the one that my first impression would have led me to? And so that's what we're going to do today. And if you like this concept, you like the idea of it, let me know down below. Any ideas of how to make it better, definitely let me know about that as well. But I will say that when I walk into a store and I see these two knives in a display case, the first one that I'd be drawn to, the one that I would want to hold first, would definitely be the Method. Sure, there is that $6 price point difference, which is attractive. There are some different prices for different variations of the Fraxion, though, either up or down. So keep that in mind. But even if you're not looking at the price, though, I would want to see the Method first. And that's really just because of the lines of the knife and just the way that it's designed. I just really like the look of the knife. And so we're going to focus on that for a quick minute. This is the first one that I'm looking at. And it reminds me in a lot of ways of knife designs from another designer who I really admire, and that is Jason Brous. So Jason Brous has a number of his designs, maybe like the Mini Division or the Parallax, that have very similar lines, and this upswept blade just very attractive. And so I would definitely be drawn to something like that. And this, like I said, it really does resemble a couple of his models. And I do like this black wash finish on the blade. You know, just very attractive. It's got a high polish that a lot of the other Kershaw black wash stuff doesn't have. And so it just makes it stand out from the rest of the other black wash series knives that I've seen and had before. So I would definitely be impressed with that. I'd also just the whole time, as I try to get this focused, the whole time I'd be really aware of how light the knife is. Just extremely light, and maybe I'd have a really good customer service representative who could tell me that it was 2.1 ounces. I don't know, maybe I wouldn't, but it's just a very light knife. Really cool in that regard. And so I'd be curious about it, move back and check out this G10. And the G10 on this knife is excellent. It's one of the real high points. It's got these cutouts to add points of contact when you have it in hand, which is very good. But then the sides here are just a very nice medium traction. You know, it's not going to be slick. It's not just there for show, and it's not so high traction that it's going to, you know, carve up any pockets or anything. So just a really good in between that's perfectly functional. And so then I'd wonder how it is in hand, and that's sort of where the first red flag comes in, because while I can fit this into the hand pretty well, it takes some time. It takes some getting used to, and that first impression wouldn't be good, you know, because it just is a little bit of a small frame. And even with my medium to smaller hands, there's not a lot of extra real estate. And so it just takes a second to find that sweet spot in hand. So, you know, that would be a little bit of a turnoff on that first impression. No jimping, no problem with this. Just the way this ramp is fine. And so I'd find that comfortable spot and it would be okay. And again, with that G10, just getting that grip on a number of spots, it does feel good, but it does take a while to get there. And flip the knife over, see that pocket clip, one position, tip up, not really deep carry. It's fine. I really wouldn't spend more than a second looking at that, and then I'd move on. See the back spacer, again, lanyard hole, nothing really that matters to me. It's just sort of there. Relatively open frame, so that's good. But then if I explored that a little bit longer, I would see something that is of very significant importance. And that is that we have one liner for the liner lock, but the other side, the show side, just has G10. So no liner for any extra like rigidity or structure. So that would be a concern, but then when I tested lockup, it would be excellent. So that concern would sort of be abated. It would be fine. Lockup is excellent, so we're good there. Closing the knife, taking a look at it, pretty sleek, streamlined, cool knife. But now opening would bring me to my my second big red flag. Taking a look at the flipper tab is sort of, muted in that it's not going to jut out and stick out, but it does make it difficult to open the knife. You have to do a light switch. You can't really do a push button. And also the detent is super strong. And if I were opening this knife brand new out of box, it would be very difficult to open. And it would really take some getting used to. Now, over the first 5 flicks, I would get used to it. And once I break that detent, it would fly open on the KVT ball bearings. But it really wouldn't give me a great first impression opening and closing the knife. Not really at all. It'd be a little bit tough on the finger. I just wouldn't like that right off the bat. And so, again, that would be another very big red flag. So then I'd put this knife down and I would move on to the Fraxion. So the Fraxion, again, coming in at 30.95 with this blue G10. I'll say right off the bat, I do like the look of the Fraxion, but the blue G10 is not really my favorite shade of blue. So there's that. So not really the best, but again, there are the other options as well that you could choose from. So not really a deal breaker at all there. Looking at the blade, it's a really nice resourceful utility type of blade. Good piercing, just like the Method. Again, not too much in terms of belly, so easy to sharpen, but still good enough for all of your EDC kind of tasks. The jimping up on the top would be a good high point because it is functional and there is a lot of it. So that's really good. And then as we move on back, just impressed with the open frame. Really like the open frame and the standoffs. That look is impressive. And while the look of the carbon fiber doesn't do too much for me, that's not really my thing. It does provide a lot of points of contact. I did say this in my Fraxion review last year, which actually I'll link to down below. Good idea. But it does provide a number of points of contact, and I do, really like the way this knife fits in hand. Again, just not too much when it comes to the amount of real estate that you have, but the real difference, and actually I'll get to the real difference in a bit. I probably wouldn't have caught that on the first impression, so I'll come back to that. But it does feel a little bit better and easier than the Method, when you're trying to get it in hand. Another thing, a real similarity, because I'd notice how light this knife is as well. You have the same deal. You have the G10 alone on one side and the liner lock. Lockup is going to be pretty much the same. But then opening, a little bit easier with this one. You see the shape of the flipper tab versus the one that was on the Method, and you have just a little bit better ability to get this knife open quickly. And while the D10 is good and certainly forceful on the Fraxion, it is not quite as difficult to break as it was on the Method. And so this knife is easier to open. Pocket clip is a different design, but basically serves the same purpose. Does leave a little bit more, I think, hanging out, but, just sort of is what it is. Again, not really a big concern of mine. I'm used to this Kershaw clip, so, that really wouldn't have any big bearing on me whatsoever. It is reversible, though, so I probably wouldn't even notice that because I don't care about stuff like that, but there is that. And so then, having looked at both of these knives, get them back next to each other, and I would make my decision. And even though I think functionally my first impression would be that the way that the Fraxion feels in hand and the way that it opens and closes, even though that is better right off the bat, I would still go with the Method. I would choose the Method because of looks, and I would try to find a way to make it work because I just like the look of the Method so much. And it's funny because I've had these decisions and I've had these comparison reviews before where I'm talking about the way a knife looks versus another and the things that I value, like ergonomics, which are so important. But I think that I would want to have this knife that badly just because of how good the knife looks. And it would be one of those things where if I brought it home and I ended up not being able to make it work, I might return it and get the Fraxion. But there's no way that if I had these two knives in front of me next to each other, there's no way that I would walk out the door without the Method. I would definitely get the Method. Now, that said, at this point, now that I've had them for a couple weeks and I'm carrying them, how are they? Well, the good news, and if you're watching this video trying to get an idea about the Method, which again is a new design, the good news is that the red flags that I had have really sort of worked themselves out. Now, the ergonomics of the Method are actually, they're working for me now because I've found that sweet spot and I can get the knife in my hand in that position really easily. So using the knife, not a problem, it just takes some getting used to. The real reason for the difference in ergos, if you look at these two knives next to each other, is you can see this choil here just sort of takes up space, and it's bigger than your forefinger, but not big enough for two fingers. And so just the way that it sort of creates wasted space that the Fraxion doesn't have if you just look at the shape of that handle. So that's why it's just a little more difficult to, in my opinion at least, to get the Method in my hands. Now, when it comes to the opening and closing and the detent on this knife is really, really strong, but it's gotten easy and broken in really well. And I mean, the action on it is fantastic now. It's fantastic. And I remember when the Fraxion first came out, I called it, and probably in my review, I probably said it, that it feels assisted, and it's not. And, that's something that Kershaw had said when this came out. And if the Fraxion feels that way, I mean, the Method just feels that way on a different level. I mean, this knife is so snappy and feels so great once it breaks in that I'd say 100% I made the right decision on that first impression, if that simulation were real. Again, all this stuff is subjective. I mean, I knew what the decision was going to be at the end, so who knows how accurate that is. But I just wanted to sort of paint that picture if I could, because of those things that I've seen, that it's just hard to make those decisions, on the spot when you're looking at a computer screen versus seeing it in person. So if you like this video, guys, you have any ideas, like I said, of how to make it better, certainly let me know down below. Overall, though, I can recommend both of these knives very strongly. And I will say 100%, the reason why I like the Method is purely based on looks. I just love the look of this knife, and I've been carrying it a lot and just having a lot of fun with it. So anyway, guys, any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. Looking forward to hearing from you. I will talk with you soon. Have a good one, and take care.